All right, welcome in everybody to the Important Nonsense Podcast. Steve Bonham, Neil Smith, Mike Manning. 32 teams in 32 days. Today, the New Orleans Saints. Neil, ready for some NOLA?
I am. Who dat? It's gonna be good. It's gonna be. We've spent a lot of time recently talking about very vanilla, boring teams and offenses, and now we get to throw some of that Cajun spice on there. So I'm looking forward to actually talking about something that might have upside.
Mike, are you as excited as Neil is?
I mean, yeah, let's get some spice in our lives.
All right. Okay, let's start talking about the Saints here. So again, we're recording these on August 10th. So if anything seems out of date, that would be why. Make sure you're signing up at patreon.com/importantnonsense. You can get these videos 2 days early. You can also get in the Discord, ask us any questions about any of this stuff. So it is out of date. We can update you on it. At the top tier, which is only $5, you get access to literally everything. So it's our rankings, our projections, our betting stuff, all of our articles, everything we do. So help us out, hop on in there. And then all this is for 12-team PPR. So if anything, rankings, projections, any of that seems a little off to you, that may be why. So adjust accordingly. But we're going to get into the Saints. It's the famous Jameis show. Get your crab legs ready. And
Ready to eat some W's.
Yeah, going to eat some dubs. Jameis projects out on a full season at least as my QB 18. He had a strong showing in the couple of games that he did play last season, but he did miss some significant time. Also, the 2020 Jameis, that was a hilarious thing we talked about a lot last year, how he got the LASIK surgery and then he could finally see, and suddenly his touchdown to interception ratio just drastically changed. So it's amazing what you can do when you're not blind anymore. But yeah, how are you guys feeling about Jameis coming into this season?
I like Jameis, famously the author of that 30 touchdown and 30 interception season that we all remember.
The greatest top 5 QB performance of all time.
Unbelievable way to go about doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as fun as it used to be when he was slinging it all over the yard. He's a little more conservative since he got the LASIK, and it's got to help that you can actually see where the defenders probably are. But I've got him at 20. I mean, the projection would lead you to believe that it should be higher, but I'm building in for the idea that there's going to probably be some real weird clunker games here. I think they're going to give him an opportunity to throw it. They're going to and he's got some weapons here. So I think I've got him at 20, but he's one of those individuals where he's technically below in my tiers, the tier 5 upside tier.
Yeah.
He's lower than that. He's in tier 6, but he is near the top of tier 6, and he does still have some upside. Would it shock anyone on this show if Jameis was able to crack top 15?
No.
Yeah.
No.
If he finished his QB 12 for the year in points per game, would that shock anybody either?
No.
Nope.
Me either. So you've got some nice upside with Jameis Winston. You also have a very scary floor. So that's the thing that I think is putting people off this and why you might want to preach some caution here. But this is probably would we agree this is the best situation weapons-wise that he's been in quite a while, at least for me. He has toys.
I mean, since the 30-30 season, I mean, he had weapons with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans there.
Right. Agreed. But it's like since then, he hasn't had much.
But I mean, that was
hasn't played much.
What was it, 3 years ago?
Yeah, 3 years ago, and he's dealt with some injuries in between there. But I have a small amount of optimism that Jameis Winston could be. I've seen articles being written about him as a potential sleeper league winner. I don't think I would go that far, but if he was my QB2, I would be pretty happy with that because I feel like I'm going to get some upside, and the investment is as such that if I had to cut him, well, he's my backup, and I didn't invest very much, and we'll go to the next person on the waiver wire. So I'm good with it.
Yeah. If you're looking at last year, he averaged over 17 points a game, and he would have been at QB 14 in points per game. So you're just outside of a QB1. And that was with
I was
no
going to
Michael
bring
Thomas.
that up too. So that includes the game in week 7 when he got hurt. So if you take that game out of it and go on points per game, it was 18.4, and he would move up to QB 13 in the 6 full
Just
games
over
that he played. Yeah.
So he would just QB 13. So that's, again, at his price point right now.
Yep.
Why would you be upset? You would be ecstatic if that was the case. And that was also with Marquez Callaway and Deontay Hardy as his 2 leading receivers.
Right.
Now he has Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, and Jarvis Landry.
Yep.
I mean, that's a bit of an improvement. The offensive line is worse, but it's a great receiving room overall. If Michael Thomas, which reports are saying he's looking really good in training camp, Jarvis Landry just needs to be healthy, really. If he's on the field, he's going to be a solid contributor. And then Chris Olave is was one of the better deep threats and route runners in the entire draft class. They traded up to get him. They're going to want to use him. So this is a solid offense all around surrounding him. And I wanted the Steelers to go after Jameis Winston.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously they had no interest of doing it, or he had no interest in coming here, whichever one. I'm not salty at all.
I think it's also worth noting too that, remember, he sat there. So 2019 was his last year with Tampa. Then he signs the deal for 2020 and sits behind Drew Brees the entire season. And then going into last season in 2021, he was splitting the first team reps all off season with Taysom Hill.
Right.
And we had to have the discussion about who's the actual starting QB. Is it Taysom Hill or is it Jameis Winston? And then it was Jameis, and he had the starting job for those 7 games and then got hurt, missed the rest of the season, and we have no idea what would have happened. He had a strong start to the year. How would it have finished? We don't know. And like you said, Mike, he has all these new fancy toys that he didn't have to work with before. So it's his first off season, even though he's coming back from an injury. It's really his first off season where he is the guy the entire summer, where the offense is built around him being the number one. He's not having to share the reps or the workload, and he actually has a full stock of players to throw the ball to. So again, I think
Taysom's daddy is gone.
Right. So I think we're in a position where we're drafting him, and his ADP right now is 18. I think I had it as. Let me double check that.
If he's your QB2,
23
very
is his
happy.
current ADP.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just saying. New toys, happy for the QB2.
So
Price
yeah,
point.
if he's my backup quarterback with the upside to potentially be top 10, then yeah, I would 100% take that. All right, running back. So Alvin Kamara has been a weird one that we've been monitoring all off season. So we're not going to get into the whole off the field thing, but he's basically dealing with a legal issue that could potentially land him in some hot water and end up with a 6-game suspension, because that's basically the running total for any of the off-field discretions in the NFL. However, the latest thing on that is they have now pushed the court hearing to outside of the NFL season, to the point where they're not even going to discuss this until the spring. And he is potentially looking at a suspension next season, but it looks like it's all systems go for him this year. So I have him projected to play 15 games. If he isn't suspended and he is going the full season, we mentioned all the other toys there and Jameis back for a full season. Where do we have Alvin Kamara?
I mean, the short answer is RB12 for just about everybody. It's right in line with the ECR. I've got him at 12. Steve, you've got him at 12. ECR's at 12. Mike, you got him at 8. Given the news about the court date situation, because there is one small fly in the ointment, there's supposed to be a pre-trial hearing, not to go all the way in the weeds on this. That'll happen at some point, assuming that they don't, but there's supposed to be a trial around this.
Right.
So more than likely, Steve, your point holds. There's the likelihood of him getting suspended for this season is dropping dramatically. So I'm looking at possibly bumping him up a spot or two. But That's about it. You're looking at the back end RB1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd agree. And my ranking is with the assumption he is 0 suspension, at least at the time of your draft and beginning of the season. If I'm going with that, I think he is a top 10 running back based on his production throughout his entire career, both in the receiving game and on the ground, and the usage he had last year, which was among the league lead to say the least.
Yeah.
He was basically the whole offense. Winston had games where he didn't attempt 20 passes similar to Carson Wentz because they just kept giving Kamara the rock. So if you're going with a workload along his, I know that they have Ingram, okay, but he's going to take some of the work. I'm not that concerned about it because Kamara showed that he was, as usual, phenomenal in the red zone and obviously the great receiving threat. I'm not too concerned with Kamara's workload and production.
Yeah, I had him as my QB, again, I keep doing that. My RB12, top of tier 3, which was my question mark tier. Assuming, like we're talking about here, that there is no suspension and it's all systems go, he would jump up a couple spots to 10, go right ahead of Derrick Henry. And that's basically where I'd feel comfortable with him in a PPR setting. So he'd move up a tier, he'd move up a couple of spots for me. But I mean, that's basically it. It is what it is. It's rinse and repeat for Alvin Kamara. I don't see a huge drop off this season. There's no reason to. And as we're going to get into here in a second, there's really nothing behind him that scares you. So outside of injury and the legal system, there really should be nothing that stops Alvin Kamara this season. So then it's Mark Ingram. He came over from Baltimore to take back that number 2 spot that he had. He went to Baltimore and then Houston, and then now he's back. So here he is. He had 2 games last year filling in for Kamara where he had double-digit PPR points. So, I mean, we feel pretty solid if it's Mark Ingram taking over, right? It's still status quo.
I view Mark Ingram as the pure handcuff to Alvin Kamara. He doesn't.
So is he handcuff worthy?
Yes, because we've seen him do it before. And your other options would be Tony Jones and Dwayne Washington.
Yeah, we know it's not Jones or Washington.
It's not going to be any of that. So it would be Mark Ingram. I would want Mark Ingram as the handcuff because his ADP is negligible. So for me, you always, as a long-time roster and Alvin Kamara enjoyer, let's just say, you'll want that handcuff because you don't want to wind up paying for it on the open market later. It's virtually free now. I know some people have issues with handcuffing. This is one where he's on the very short list of, it's kind of like the Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison thing. I would want it, and this is even less cost prohibitive than that example. So for me, that is something I would want.
It's almost the exact same cost as Swift Jamal Williams.
Yeah.
It's the 14th round for Mark Ingram, and you're paying virtually the same price in ADP for Swift. So it's basically the exact same thing we've already talked about there.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to get the majority of touches whenever or if Kamara is to miss any time. So solid backup to have, or solid handcuff to have, perfectly fine.
He would be a borderline top 20 PPR running back. Ingram would be if Kamara wasn't playing, if he wasn't in the picture. Would we agree with that? Or I said borderline. So
sure.
20 to 25, I could see being fine.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If he's back end RB2 is what you're talking about.
100%. All right, wide receiver. Michael Thomas appears to be on track to finally return from his ankle injury. Remember in 2019, it was a 3-headed monster at the top of the fantasy leaderboard, and it was a real debate about who's the MVP. Is it Lamar Jackson? Is it Christian McCaffrey? Or is it Michael Thomas? Christian McCaffrey has played, I believe, a total of 10 games we talked about in the last 2 seasons. and Michael Thomas has played 7. So Lamar, the only one who is who's holding up so far. Jack, it wasn't me if anything happens.
Who also still missed a couple games last year.
Right. But not nearly as bad as the other two.
No.
This was my greater point. But yeah, Michael Thomas looks to finally be back. My whole thing we talked about, Neil, last season was I feel like Michael Thomas is still pretty much ready to go. He just doesn't want to play for Sean Payton anymore. And he basically was just sitting on the sideline to not have to play for Sean Payton anymore. Then magically Sean Payton leaves and Michael Thomas looks spectacular in camp. So I'm not connecting dots or anything.
No.
But you can't prove it wasn't.
Exactly. We've talked about the weapons a bunch. The Saints also traded up in the first round to select Ohio State wide receiver Chris Olave, added a solid number 2 option and deep threat. And while all this was going on, they signed Jarvis Landry after he weaseled his way out of Cleveland. And now he is technically the slot wide receiver. So you've got Thomas, Olave, and Jarvis Landry. And they basically put everybody that was a starter last season onto the second tier of this list, which is pretty entertaining to me. But Michael Thomas, I think, to me, is the one that's most intriguing. I know people love to gush about the rookie. Let's start at the top, though. What do you guys think about Michael Thomas heading into this season? Neil?
The closer he gets to the pup, the closer I get to moving him up my rankings. I have him still ranked at wide receiver 37. That is a function of me waiting for him to get cleared. But all reports are that seems to be like it's going to happen. So I'll probably be moving him up to a top end wide receiver 3, right near the back end of wide receiver 2. He's the one that I believe in the most. And I think with Jameis throwing him the rock as opposed to Taysom Hill attempting to try and play quarterback. Trevor Siemian. I feel a lot better about this, despite the fact that Michael Thomas, as you mentioned, only played 7 games in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. So it seems like the wheels are in motion to him coming back, and I think once he's finally cleared, I will be happy to move him up to a top-end wide receiver 3.
I liked whenever the skepticism was there for his health earlier in the offseason because
you could get him at such a song.
You could get such a great value on him. Now he's getting in the range where I'm like, all right, well, this is actually where I would normally take him or be fine with taking him. So I was just, could be better because he's going at wide receiver 27. So a high-end wide receiver 3.
He's going at 33 right now in PPR.
Well, then mine is slightly off.
That's all right. 7th round.
Which is, again, the range I would be okay with picking him. Because if you're looking at other players in that range, you're going to get guys like Elijah Moore, Gabriel Davis, guys with question marks. But we've seen Jameis Winston's not afraid to lock in on a guy and be like, all right, I like throwing it to him, so I'm just going to keep doing that like 10 times, 12 times a game.
Right.
So
but to me, there's another situation too where, again, I hate to keep, beating a dead horse here, but like he's going after Hunter Renfrow. What are we doing? Like he's going.
We can do a whole show on Hunter Renfrow and
I know
we will. It's going to be the wrap-up show, Mike. You're missing the point. That will happen.
Again, I don't want to keep harping on it, but that's crazy to me. He's going after Gabriel Davis, who's the number 2 question mark on his roster. He's going after DeAndre Hopkins, who isn't even playing 6 games. He's going after Adam Thielen, who we mentioned has upside in Minnesota, but still, again, to me, I think Michael Thomas, if you're telling me he's healthy and he's back, he's the number 1. He's the alpha in this receiving corps. So to tell me you're going to get, again, the number 1 receiving option on an offense in the mid to late 30s right now in PPR, I will take Michael Thomas every chance I get. So let's transition to who we think the number 2 option here is. Is it Olave, the rookie? Does he have a shot to break out? Or is it all reliable? Jarvis Landry. out of the slot? Who are we more interested in here?
Well, for me, it's Landry. I haven't given up on my boyfriend just yet.
Mm-hmm.
So this actually, to me, is very interesting because, as I believe it was Mike who mentioned, that Winston is not a stranger to locking in on a guy. We don't know that he won't lock in on Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry has proven to be very reliable in situations like that. So as long as he's actually healthy and he's out there, I think Landry running out of the slot is a huge, massive quality of life upgrade for them over anything they've had slot related for years. So I think he's going to see a decent amount of run, decent amount of targets. Steve, I mentioned to you privately that I don't agree with your Jarvis Landry projection because you didn't give him a rushing touchdown. I stand by that, and I'll put $10 on it right here, right now, in front of everybody. That at some point Jarvis Landry gets a rushing touchdown. I
gave him 8 carries for 37 yards. I mean,
not a touchdown. It's not a touchdown.
Yeah, because the touchdown will go to Taysom Hill. We all know it.
Yeah, they do.
Sean Payton's not there anymore.
Yeah.
But I still believe that it's Landry over the rookie as the secondary option in the wide receiver room. They are close, and I think that's going to be the polarizing conversation because some people I've seen firmly think Jarvis Landry is dead and Olave is who you want to invest in. Mike, how does it work for you?
I think Olave is going to cost too much for me to be comfortable taking him as the number 2. I think Landry is at a solid range where, okay, if he becomes the number 2 and you paid that much, I'm okay with it. I don't think that Olave is going to be consistent. He's the new toy, the traded up for. He's the deep threat. It's just, I think that his ADP will not only be what it is now, but continue to rise throughout training camp because we're seeing videos of Michael Thomas and we're seeing videos of Chris Olave. And we're not seeing anything about Jarvis Landry because he's been dealing with, I think, a couple minor injuries or just some conditioning type stuff that he's just like, I don't need to have training camp right now. So I think that throughout this offseason, Olave is going to even rise in ADP, and I won't want to pay.
That's also fair. I know right now we've got me and Neil have it roughly the same with Landry at about 50 and Olave around 55-ish. And then, Mike, you've got it flipped slightly. Right now it's Olave 47, Landry 52 in ADP. So we're projecting them and ranking them about in that area. But again, for me at wide receiver at that point, that's my upside. Like I'm willing to take a shot on him after I've already got my reliable guys I know I can trust. And I just think there's a stronger chance that Landry is competing with Michael Thomas for the lead in targets than it is the rookie.
He didn't play bad last year when he was healthy.
Right.
He had good games in Cleveland with a broken-armed or broken-shouldered Baker Mayfield.
Right. And we talked about that before as well when we were breaking down Baker, like just his tendencies and the players that he tends to look for. But Landry did lead the Browns with 87 targets last year. So I've got him projected for 93 this season as the number 2. And again, that's 93 targets in 16 games. He had 87 in 12 games played last year. So I don't think he has quite the volume because he has more to compete with on this roster than he did in Cleveland. But I still think he has enough left in the tank that it's worth a flyer for me late to have that consistent flex on a weekly basis. All right. Do we want to talk about anybody else in the wide receiver room?
No.
Excellent.
We saw what they did last year, and that was when they had the main opportunity.
That's when they had the chances, and it didn't matter. So,
the internet would like you to believe that Marquez Callaway is going to matter, and I'm here to tell you that it won't. And I love
they did that last year in the preseason too.
I know, but Steve, before we go into tight end and wrap the show, I'm just wanted to point out: did you see? Jack's got it on here. Kevin White still on the depth chart. Did you see the sad attempt on the internet to try and post Kevin White camp videos of him high pointing footballs in camp and trying to get people excited?
Hey,
if you haven't,
we should still collecting a paycheck.
I can't believe he's still in the league. It's unbelievable.
He had 5 targets last season. Ooh. So cash that money.
Fran, I think.
No, on the Saints.
Oh wow,
that's how irrelevant he was. Tight end. Adam Trautman leading the way, followed by Juwan Johnson, and then Taysom Hill is there. I love the fact that he went from the starting QB to the third string tight end. That's how the mighty have fallen. Paying a lot for that third string tight end, though. So it is what it is. He will still have his role, but he is irrelevant enough that we don't need to talk about him. Do we need to talk about Adam Trautman at all? Because I don't have him ranked that way or projected that way.
Nope.
Not really, no. We've all got Adam Trautman down in the 30 range. Yeah. He's past the even I punted tight end dart throw territory, and it's so crowded because Jack doesn't even have it. In addition to the names that are on this list, they also signed Chris Herndon to not matter. Right. So it's all gross. All of it's gross. And I would say, do you even care at this point about Adam Trautman in Dynasty?
Still, I mean, if your rosters are deep enough,
and
you're keeping any starting tight end. But no, I'm not looking to have anything to do with Adam Trautman. Again, he had his chance last year. Juwan Johnson showed out more.
Adam Trautman's 24.
He'll be 25, I believe, by the start of the season.
Yeah, he was 24 last year. So he's 25 now, which means he's still 2 years away from tight end prime. So you're still waiting. If you want to cut him because you need a roster space in the next 2 years, sure.
Yeah,
you go for it.
My greater point is that's how little this matters. This is a redraft show, and we had to go all the way into Dynasty deep cuts.
Yeah, Adam Trautman, a great name to know in 2024.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Who's his quarterback?
Ian Book.
Ian Book. I was going to say Zach Wilson.
Oh yeah.
After his contract's up, and then he winds up in with the same. Yeah, that's
Marcus Mariota still. He's bouncing around the league.
Oh, I like it.
Tight end doesn't matter to me here, mainly because it's not even that I don't believe in Trautman. Trautman has had talent, has had flashes in the past, but again, we've mentioned it several times here. If I'm looking at targets, I'm looking at Michael Thomas, I'm looking at Jarvis Landry, I'm looking at Alvin Kamara, I'm looking at Chris Olave, and then maybe is your fifth option the tight end, and really that's just in the red zone. And even when you get to the red zone, it's probably Taysom Hill for no God-given reason.
Or it's just Kamara.
Yeah.
It's just Kamara, like it's always been. Nothing changes.
Yeah. And then if you want to go by tendencies, again, we keep talking about the big season that he had in 2019. With Jameis, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans had virtually the same amount of targets that year. Brashad Perriman was third with 69. So it was 120, 118, and then 69. And then Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard both had about 54. So it's not even that he favored the tight end or that was a big feature. It's just he had better options and threw to better options. And that's basically what's going to happen here. Defense and kicker. Saints right now in ADP are going fourth. That is banana sandwich. I don't know what is happening there. The defense will be fine. It's not going to be spectacular.
They've been having too many. For the purposes of this joke, you would need to know that one of the most popular drinks on Bourbon Street is called a hurricane. People have been having too many hurricanes, apparently, because what? Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
They've been a solid defense for the past few years in terms of like.
Look, they get Carolina twice.
They get turnovers. Twice. They get some turnovers and some sacks, but
yeah, they get Carolina twice. They get Atlanta twice. They get a fairly easy schedule, but you got to play Tampa Bay twice. So I'm not.
Which they seem to do really well, though.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But even still,
they're the only ones that really do it. But
right.
It's mainly turnover based, but I have them ranked and projected about 12. I got them as the back end of a usable defense. I think they're more of a streaming option than someone I would reach for, like they're currently going as an ADP, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then Will Lutz, he's back for now. We'll see if that changes. But he's going ADP kicker 15. So basically not being drafted, because why would you draft 2 kickers? It just doesn't make any sense. Why do you hate yourself? Seek counseling. But Will Lutz, not draftable to me. I'm not super interested in it. Plenty of better options out there. So
if he can get back to his old form from before he got hurt, waiver wireable, because he was a top 5 kicker for a long time, but
not draftable though.
He's going to need to prove. Yeah, exactly. Pick him up off waivers if he can recapture the old man.
He's a great name to know for streaming down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Plays in a dome. That's always the way to go.
Yeah, plays in multiple domes.
Yeah,
it's true. He does. He plays in multiple domes, and in Florida which is not a dome, but it's nice out.
All right, that closes out the Saints. We will be back tomorrow with the New York Football Giants. Till then, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!